And so we're almost ready. We're just at the cusp of that time. And in my travels, I'm traveling the world and teaching all across the globe. I'm going to Russia next. What I find is that there are just these little edges of patriarchy that we're still holding on to, even in the spiritual world. Little edges, they hide in little corners, and we don't see them. And so I feel that part of my calling is to really encourage us to move through those old limiting beliefs, and to step into the fullness of who we are as women, because it is essential for the planet that we as women wake up to the fullness of who we are, and be willing to embody the feminine, because it's our gateway as humanity. If we don't reclaim the feminine, we're stuck in the third chakra with what we already know, and we know what we already know, and we know that it's not working. The financial systems are falling apart. There's too much corruption. There's too much war, and the way through is through the feminine. And so the feminine exists in men too, sure, absolutely, and the masculine is equally important. However, there's something about the mystery of the feminine which needs to be understood, and for us to start living into. So those of us who have, like all of us in this room, have managed to find our place in the world where we have some power, have had to come to terms with the masculine in ourselves. We've had to learn how to be powerful in men's worlds, and how to stay pregnant, how to be able to stand our ground, how to be able to survive in the financial world, how to work with structure. And that's been really, really crucial. We wouldn't be able to be where we are now if we didn't have a willingness for that. Now is the time for us to open to the feminine. And so the trick is that it's very challenging for a woman who's been focused on performance and outcome and achievement to drop that. So now, here comes the next trick. As women who have achieved in society, we then work out that the way that we can be successful as lovers is that we have to give our man an orgasm, which means an ejaculation at this point. We must ejaculate. And then the men get a bit wiser and they start feeling, well, no, I want the woman to have pleasure too. So now the woman's goal becomes to have an orgasm so that he can have an orgasm so that she can be successful. Right? So it becomes this massive process of filled with anxiety for the guy who's scared he's not going to have an erection, because if he doesn't have an erection, he's going to look like he's not a real man. And the woman will look at him not having an erection and take that as a sign that he's not attracted to her. And so we get into this huge anxiety, which is very prevalent in our society. And then the other thing that happens to us is that we switch between being the virgin and the whore. Right? So what I've noticed in the world is that it's more or less acceptable to be a whore until you found your man. Because you're supposed to find a man. Right? That's the whole purpose of being a woman. And then, and for many years, by the way, I don't know if you realize that, but until very recently, if you were a woman on your own, you were in trouble. There was no way that you could survive without having a husband or being a sex worker. You had to have some way of relating to a man sexually. Otherwise, you were going to be out on the streets, and that was going to be it. It meant survival is at risk. Wow. So it's, and I think about 200, 300 years ago still, if a woman was walking on her own at night in the streets, the law said that men had the right to gang rape her. Wow. Because women should be taught a lesson, where their sexuality, where they should be. They could be tempting by being in the streets. So we come from a rather severe history. And this history is still in ourselves. It's busy working through my system as we speak. So if you hear me bringing up wind, it's in the African tradition, understanding of that is that it's the ancestors speaking. So my ancestors all the way back down, 5,000 years, I presume, doing a complete reshuffle of energy here. So this is where we've come from a place where our sexuality has been okay, you know, to have desire and be flirtatious and wear the short dresses and wear the makeup and flirt until we found the man. And traditionally in patriarchy, get married, right? So marriage is a patriarchal institution. I'm not saying that it's not possible to make it a very enlightened institution too. It just does take work because it's very interwoven with church and state and the structures of church and state. So now a girl gets married to boy, and suddenly something really interesting happens. The very same man who was so desirous a little while ago, suddenly there's no more desire. And so she accepts that now her sexuality is about kind of servicing her man. Because after all, it says that in the contract. You know? And so you might not have experienced that yourself, but there are so many women that I've worked with who have a very deep belief that once they're married or they have a long-term partner, it's not about their desire anymore. Their sexuality becomes something that is only of relevance or significance in terms of the man's desire, which of course is also very deeply unfulfilling to the man, because men actually want the feminine. They actually want the deep feminine. Some time ago, I did some deep journeying with archetypes with a group of friends of mine who we were on a spiritual journey together, and we decided to do a journey on the rapist, to go and meet the energy of the rapist, because we felt that some consciousness had to be brought to this energy formation. And we did the journey, and I got sick for a month. And I lay in bed, and the message that the rapist gave me was that he is going to keep on raping women until women start opening to the depth of the feminine. He wants to meet the feminine in the fullness of who she is.
Wow. And
so that for me was a really, really strong message to say that I think a lot of the dysfunction that we find in men is kind of a reverse action, which is actually inspired by a deep yearning to really meet the feminine, not what in our school we call the junior male, because in patriarchy women have become junior males. You know, we're following the orders. We're trying to be equal as men, but we kind of know we can't quite be equal to men, so we're apprenticing with men at all levels, and we're also apprenticing with men sexually. So that happens the following kind of thing.